Welcome to Project Car Media, and in this video we are finally getting back to work on the RSX. We're going to be installing some Raceland coilovers and a DC Sports short ram intake, and then we're going to take it out for a drive and see how the new intake sounds and how the new coilovers ride. So stick around. All right, so for the first performance mod, if you remember when I was under the hood cleaning the engine, I said I was going to get an intake because these engines sound so good with an intake. And here is the intake that I got. It was definitely on a budget. It is made by DC Sports, and they've been around a really long time. And they make pretty good products. So I was able to pick this intake up brand new for about 160 bucks. And it's just a short ram intake. Let me show you guys what I got here. So as you can see, it's just a pipe, a filter, and some hardware, nothing crazy. Let's go over here to the engine bay and start removing this intake, get this whole box out of here. As we know, there's a huge tear underneath here. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so if you guys remember when I took the top off, there's basically just some screws around that pull this top piece off, but we're gonna need to be able to remove this and the piece underneath this box. So first thing we need to do is unplug our intake temperature sensor. We're going to need to take the box off of the hose. We're going to need to disconnect the hose from the intake manifold, take off this little hose here. So quite a bit to do to get the intake all out of here, but once it is, there's like this huge open cavity and it's going to look really funny until we get that new intake in. Top of the intake is off. We got it off the tube, and so I think now what we're going to do is try to take this whole bottom piece off, and then we'll work on the hose. Now as you can see, this air filter was actually not in bad shape. It looked pretty new actually, but that's going to go along with this whole intake box and everything. So I got all the screws out of the bottom box here, so let's see if we can get this out. Probably a lot easier without the intake tube here. So I think I'm going to work on getting the intake tube off, and then once that's off, then we'll pull that bottom box out. All right, I got the intake tube out and it literally like ripped in half. This is where the tear was. We still need to get the intake temperature sensor out and grab the hose clamps off of these, but now we are free and clear. So I'm going to go ahead and take this box out and we'll work on getting the new intake in. It looks like I might have to remove the stock sway bar, which I've already done once when I did the oil filter, but I might have to loosen these up so I can move this and get this out of here. All right, I got the sway bar undone here, so now I can actually move it out of the way a little bit. All right, so now I can move the strut bar out of the way and hopefully be able to lift this box up and out of here. Now the whole space is empty. As you can see, it's like this huge gaping hole. But once we get the intake in here, you know, we'll have the pipe and the filter. There's plenty of room for it, and it's going to look really, really good. You can also get access to all your shift cables and your motor mount and everything this way. So yeah, I think it just really cleans up the engine bay, just having that whole thing out of there. Let's go ahead and get the new intake in. I ended up just putting the whole intake in, and I'm really impressed with the quality I get with the amount of money I get. So this is a DC Sports short ram intake, but it came with all kinds of cool things. Like underneath this tab here, there's like a vibration mount thing that they included, and they included all of the hose clamps, and even the intake air's temperature sensor slid right in. And I've read on other aftermarket intakes that sometimes you have to get a different grommet for this. And they even included a little hose here, and I ended up using one of my hose clamps I had laying around. But I do also like the fact that the intake is angled away from the header. So like that's the only bad thing about short ram intakes in these cars, is that the header is like right here, and so all the heat from the header can get into the intake. but you know, they at least like angled it away from the header a little bit. So really impressed with this intake, and it was a fairly easy install. There was a little bit of adjusting and stuff like that, and it also matches. I mean, this brushed aluminum color kind of matches with the rest of the engine, and I think it looks really cool, especially with the red filter. Let's start this thing up, see how it sounds, and then we'll go for a drive and see how much different this intake makes the engine sound. On to the coilovers. These are Raceland classic coilovers for the RSX. They're adjustable height-wise, but they are not adjustable in dampening, which is totally fine with me. They're pretty cheap, but they are much better quality and much better company than the set of coilovers I tried to order previously. I tried to order some max speeding rods, which is kind of a cheaper Chinese coilover, but like I was trying to say, on a budget, and they had an adjustable dampening one. So I tried to go with that. Long story short, I waited 3 weeks for them to tell me that it's actually out of stock, and so I had them refund me. I went on Raceland's website, got these classics for about $100 more, and I ordered them on a Wednesday, and they were here on Friday. So huge shout out to Raceland for actually, you know, being a decent company here. These are the rears here. We got some spanner wrenches. These are the fronts. These are going to work out really well. So I'm going to do the front first, and then we'll just kind of see where it is. If it needs to be adjusted, we need to raise the height up, we will. If it needs to be lowered, we can do that as well. So I'm just going to throw it on just like it is and see what it looks like. So if you can just get a mental image as to what the car looks like right now with the stock suspension, we'll get another shot after I've lowered just the fronts. We'll see what it looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and jack the car up and take off the driver's side wheel, and we'll go ahead and start on the driver's side. I'm going to start with the driver's side, and I got the wheel off, got the car jacked up, and as you can see, like, the caliper looks pretty new on this, same with the studs, like I said before. So it's really hard to tell if, and you know, the wheel bearing, I mean, you could kind of makes a little grindy noise, but it spins pretty freely, so I don't know, I can't really tell, but I don't know, I can't tell if that's going to be the wheel bearing or not that's making that noise. But if we look at the shock and spring, I mean, there's just like this rust caked on. This is definitely the original, and so hopefully it doesn't give me too much trouble getting all these bolts off. But basically what we're going to do is, I've already unwound this, but we're going to take this cotter pin out here, take this bolt off, get the tie rod through. Then we're going to move over to this side, and there's two big bolts right here that we're going to need to take off, as well as like the brake line and ABS bolts. And then once those bolts are off, then we will move up to the top here and take off these three bolts here, and the whole thing should just fall out. Obviously, you know, things could go very wrong, which tends to happen sometimes, but I'm gonna go ahead and get working on this, see if I can get this piece out, and I'll go set it on the workbench next to the new front coilover, and we'll just compare and see, you know, how tall this one is compared to that one. All right, got the driver's side shock and spring out, and look how much different it is compared to the coilover. Looks like it's already about 2 inches shorter than the stock spring. I was hoping that the spring wouldn't be under tension, so I wouldn't have to use spring compressors to take off the top hat, but unfortunately it is. So I did borrow a spring compressor from my brother, so I'm hoping that that will work just to get the top hat off so I can swap it onto the front coilover. But man, the tie rod was so hard to get out. I actually had to run to Harbor Freight and get a tie rod removal tool. I was really hoping that I could just bang on it a couple times with the bolt on, but that did not work. It was in there pretty good. This is definitely the original shock and spring, and it definitely had never been off before. These two bolts came off pretty easy. They were a 19 on one side, I think like a 7/8 wrench on the other. The tie rod bolt was a 19, and then the three top bolts were 14s, and then there's a couple bolts right here for the brake line and the ABS, and that was like a 10 and a 12. So all in all, like, really easy to get out if the tie rod can come out easily. Like, it's like a 5-minute job. Now, as far as installing the new one, You can see that the collars here are loose. I'm gonna get this all set up, get the spring compressor out, get the top hat off of this, and throw it back in, and I'll show you guys what it looks like inside the car. Okay, well, I ran into some problems with these stock shocks. So it turns out, even though I got it out and I needed to reuse this top hat here, it is impossible to get this top nut off with just one person. I don't have a vise big enough, I don't have a second person, and you know, after all these miles, these are probably worn out anyway. So what I ended up doing was just getting some new top hats from Raceland to throw them on to the new coilovers. They were about 70 bucks, but I think it was worth it. I mean, it took me about an hour to put the spring compressor on here, get it tightened down enough to get this loose enough to take the nut off without it shooting out, and doing that 4 times is going to be impossible. So I got some new top hats. Let me go show you guys those. All right, now here is one of the coilovers fully assembled. As you can see here, I had to lower this bottom perch down here all the way down just to get the top hat and all of these pieces on the actual coilover. But this is the new top hat that I got from Raceland. This is one of the 2 that I got. And so now it's all assembled, and now this is the actual driver's side, so now I can actually put this one in the car. Once it's in, I'll need to torque this top nut. I don't really know what to torque it to. There's nowhere on the internet or anything that gives any kind of information, so I'm gonna just guess like 40 or 50 foot-pounds, I'm guessing. The other thing I did was I did a little bit more research, and I found out that the front suspension on the RSX is a McPherson strut system, and they, even when you lower it, have a tendency to not get any negative camber. So I ended up picking up a set of these. These are SPC adjustable camber bolts, so it's like a really cheap way to get up to negative 1.75 degrees of camber, one on each side into the top bolt. So it'll actually go into this hole right here, and it can actually adjust the coilover up to negative 1.75 degrees. So it won't be much, but it'll be enough to, I think, dial it in. All I got to do now is throw them on the car. Currently they're set to the lowest setting. I might spin it up an inch from here and see what that looks like, and go from there. Again, I don't install coilovers very often, so this is probably going to take me a while, and hopefully I get it right. But yeah, let's go ahead and put in the driver's side coils. So I got the front coilovers on, and they took a lot longer than I wanted to, but I forgot to show you guys it before I backed it in to do the rears. But I mean, look at this. This looks so good. It's already settled a little bit. I went basically an inch from the bottom of the coilover. That's where I put the collar. And when I first set it down, it was about 1 finger's worth of wheel gap, and now like I can barely get my finger in there. So it's definitely settling a little bit. And I got, the alignment good enough to either drive it over to Peak Innovation Motorsports or trailer it. I haven't quite decided yet, but I mean, just looking at how the front looks right now, oh man, it looks so good. Yeah, I mean, just the fronts alone, like I can't wait for this to be done and get aligned. It's going to be so much fun. And this thing sat for like, I want to say like 3 weeks or something, or maybe 4 weeks, just sitting up on the jack stands while I was doing the fronts, because I had some family issues and stuff. Just took a lot of time, and the thing just started right up. No smoke, no nothing. I'm just like constantly just so happy with this car. And so now we are going to do the rears. Hopefully they are a little bit easier because they have less bolts, and hopefully it'll go a little bit easier. So I will catch back up with you guys as soon as I get the rears done, and then we will get just an overall look before I take it over to Peak Innovation Motorsports for an alignment. All right, so we've got the rear jacked up and the rear wheels off, and the rear is pretty easy compared to the front. We've got one bolt right here. It's a 17, and then one on the bottom, which is also a 17. Once those are undone, then what we need to do is go up here into the trunk area and remove this whole carpet and everything, because the bolts are right underneath here, and there's only 2 of them. So I already have the plastic piece here removed, so I just need to get this piece out here, and I can get to the 2 bolts on either side, and it should be pretty easy. As far as swapping over the top hats, I'm not quite sure because I haven't seen them yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this carpet out and get all the bolts out, and I'll see if I can get one side out and show you guys what it looks like. I got the side out here, and you can see there is the rear shock with just a couple bolts. Got the passenger side rear out, and as you can see, I've got my spring compressor on, tightening down both sides, and then on the top I've got the Allen to hold the shock, and I've already actually loosened the nut here. So that is great because it saved me, you know, I paid about 35 bucks for the spring compressor, and I was looking at all new top hats for the rear, and it was going to be about $100, and I have to wait a week just to get these new top hats here. So I decided to see if I could save a little bit of time and money by just buying a spring compressor like the one I borrowed from my brother, and turns out this did work out. I've got the nut loose up here. It's a lot easier to take off than the front, so I'll be able to reuse this top hat for the rear coilovers. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the top hat off, get it on the new coilover, and then I'll show you what it looks like installed. All right, so this is the driver's side rear. I got it in and everything's bolted up, good to go. I actually did get both sides done and then threw the wheels on, lowered it down, drove it around the block, and realized that the rear was like an inch lower than the front. You know, again, setting these height wise, it was totally just a guess. So right now I've got it an inch above the bottom of the coilover, and I'm gonna want to go up, or 2 inches above the bottom of the coilover, sorry. I'm gonna wanna go up another inch to meet the front. I think that should make it pretty even. I've already done the other side, and it seems like it's a little bit high, but I still need to go drive it around and let it settle. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Go drive it real quick, let it settle, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like all done. All right, I got the coilovers on and I got the height dialed pretty good. Again, this is only my second time ever doing coilovers, so I think the rear might just be maybe an 1/8 inch higher than the front. I'm only driven a total of like a half a mile around the block, so everything's gonna settle and probably get a little bit lower. And then, you know, I might have to make some adjustments at that time, but I really like the way it sits right now. There's just enough wheel well gap. I mean, everything looks really good. Obviously, I still need to take it over to Peak Innovation Motorsports to get an alignment, but I am super happy with the way that these coilovers turned out and how the car looks now with it being lowered. It just, oh man, it really, I've said this before, but it really makes the car. I think it looks 100 times better with it lowered like this. So yeah, everything's pretty much dialed in, and I just need to get over there, get the alignment done, and maybe make a couple more adjustments on the coilovers when it's on the lift over there. I'm thinking I might, you know, depending on how it looks after driving for 10 miles or so, I might end up raising the rear just a little tiny bit, or maybe the front will settle a little bit. I'm not really sure, but man, look how good it looks with it lowered with these 17s. I got no rubbing when I got out of my driveway on the front or the rear. Haven't tried lock to lock yet on the front, but I'm pretty sure it should be all right. So super excited about the coilovers, man. They look just so good. All right, now that we got the coilovers installed and the intake installed, we're gonna go ahead and do that test drive now. I apologize for not taking the test drive earlier after I got the intake installed. Just was excited to get to the coilovers. So coilovers are on, basic alignment is in. I mean, I can drive it down the street a little bit, and let's just hear this intake. Let's see if it makes any difference in the sound. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too far because I got to get this thing over to Peak Innovation Motorsports in a couple days to get the alignment done, but I think we can go down the road a little ways and see how it rides and see how this intake sounds. Yeah, so as you can see, my wheel's off by a little bit, but I was able to get it to drive pretty straight. So yeah, hopefully that works out. So far they're riding pretty good. I don't feel any rubbing or anything like that. Yeah, I'm still getting that howling noise. Again, I don't know if that's my tires or if that's my wheel bearings. I knew it wasn't the suspension, but at least I'm not getting any more suspension clunks when I hit bumps. And it rides pretty good. Like, the suspension actually is not bad for how cheap it was. The bumps are nice and smooth. It's just tight enough, you know. So yeah, impressed so far with the coilovers. So let's get out on the main straight here, and we'll rip some i-vtec and see if it sounds any different than stock. Here we go. Oh my God, did you guys hear that? I gotta try that again. Oh my God. I can't believe is that fake? i-vtec pops so loud. Oh my God. Wow. I cannot believe that intake made that much of a difference. Wow. Well, I gotta try that again. Oh my gosh, that just makes i-vtec pop so loud. Yeah, so far no rubbing at full lock with the coilovers either. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how loud i-vtec pops. Like, I think when I originally drove it with the stock airbox, you couldn't even really hear i-vtec pop at all. But man, with this intake, it pops so loud. Let's try it again. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, it's so loud. Woo! Oh. That is so awesome. Oh my gosh. I love this car. This car is so cool now. Oh man. And the coilovers ride great. No rubbing, no clunking, no nothing like that. But that intake is so amazing. And it actually pulls really hard once it hits i-vtec. So, man. Oh my God. That is so, I've had an Accord with the H22 in it, and that i-vtec was pretty loud. I've had a Honda VFR 800 with muffler delete, and that i-vtec was pretty loud as well. And, you know, my brother had S2000, and that i-vtec was pretty loud, but nothing is louder than this. Just an intake. Just an intake. This is what it sounds like. I cannot believe that. That is so crazy. What a great investment, dude. Intake was like, what, maybe, it was like 160 bucks, and the engine sounds great. It pulls harder up top, and I got no check engine lights or anything like that. Like, oh man, that was so awesome. All right, well, let's get back to the garage here, and we'll finish up this video before I take it over to Peak Innovation Motorsports to get the proper alignment done. So we made it back to the garage in one piece, and wow, I cannot believe how well that intake makes this car run and sound. I've never heard i-vtec pop so loud in my life. I just want to drive all day and just pop i-vtec everywhere, but unfortunately I have to get the car aligned before I go driving around too much. I don't want to ruin the tires. Yeah, overall, I think the intake really makes the car sound better, and it really pulls harder once it hits i-vtec as well. So that was a pretty good investment in my mind. The Raceland coilovers I thought rode really well. You know, they weren't super bouncy or bumpy or anything like that, and you know, there was no clunking or anything. So overall, just within the couple miles that I drove it, the Raceland coilovers seemed to be working just fine for, you know, what I'm doing with it. After we get the car back from alignment, then I can do a final reveal. I'm gonna clean it up again, talk about all how much I have into the car, see if I'm gonna be upside down in it or not. Right now, I'm loving the car, and you know, there's a good chance that I might take my time selling it. But really, I'm pretty much done with expenses. The only thing I need to pay for is the alignment, and unfortunately, if the wheel bearings are bad in the front or wherever, you know, I need to have those replaced as well, and that's really gonna like put me right on the edge of being upside down this car or not. So I'm hoping that it's just my tires. Billy over at Peak Innovation Motorsports has a set of wheels and tires that will fit this car. And so he's gonna throw those on when they go do their test drive after the alignment and see if that howling is still there. If it is, it's probably wheel bearings. If it's not, then you know, it's the tires that I ended up getting, which is good. I can put that in the ad. For now, I'm super excited on how the car ended up looking with the coilovers and how the intake sounds, and everything went really well. In the next video, I got a couple more little things to do before the final reveal, which I'll show you guys in the next video, and then we could talk about how much I have into the car, talk about everything I've spent. We'll go through each item and we'll discuss whether I'm going to be upside down in this car or not when I go to sell it. Yeah, and then we'll be done. This car will be wrapped at that point, and I'm super excited to finish it up. In the meantime, if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe. It really, really helps me out. Definitely stick around for the last RSX video because it is going to really wrap everything up. So again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next video.